Imagine your English skills like a beautiful garden. You want it to grow, to be full of colorful flowers and strong trees. But a garden doesn't just appear overnight. It needs care, attention, and most importantly, regular work. Many people start learning English with a big burst of energy, like planting hundreds of seeds all at once. They study for hours one day, then maybe nothing for a week. This is like a sudden rainstorm followed by a long drought. The seeds might sprout, but they will struggle to grow strong. What if I told you there's a more reliable way? A gentler, steadier path to a flourishing English garden? This path is built with something called habits. Small, consistent actions that, over time, create amazing results. Think of it like watering your garden a little bit every single day. Each drop of water might seem insignificant on its own, but together they make your plants thrive. Learning English isn't just about knowing grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary lists. It's about making English a part of your life. And habits are the bridges that connect your desire to learn with the actual learning process. They are the secret sauce, the magic ingredient that turns wishes into skills. So why are habits so powerful? Well, our brains love routines. When you do something regularly, your brain creates a shortcut. It doesn't have to think hard about it anymore. Brushing your teeth is a habit. You don't wake up every morning and debate whether or not to brush. You just do it. Imagine if learning English felt that automatic, that effortless. That's the power we are talking about. When you rely only on motivation, it's like waiting for a sunny day to go outside. Some days are sunny and you feel great, but other days are cloudy and you might not feel like doing anything. Habits are different. Habits are like having an umbrella. Even if it's raining, even if you don't feel super motivated, your habit carries you through. You still do your small English practice because it's simply what you do. Let's talk about the first step in building any habit, especially for learning English. Start small. Really, really small. So small that it feels almost too easy. Why? Because the biggest enemy of a new habit is feeling overwhelmed. If you tell yourself, I will study English for 2 hours every day, that sounds like a huge mountain to climb. On a busy day or a tired day, you'll look at that mountain and say, not today. And then not today becomes not tomorrow either. Instead, what if you said, I will learn one new English word today, just one. Or, I will listen to one English song today. Or, I will read one paragraph in English. Can you do that? Of course you can. It's easy. The goal here isn't to become fluent in a day. The goal is to show up. The goal is to build the muscle of consistency. Think of it like this. If you want to build a strong wall, you don't try to lift the whole wall at once. You lay one brick perfectly, then another, and another. Each small action, each tiny habit, is a brick in your wall of English fluency. Learning 5 new words every day might not sound like much, but after a month, that's 150 new words. After a year, that's over 1,800. New words! That's the magic of compounding, where small efforts add up to big results over time. So your first mission is to pick a tiny English learning action, something you can do in 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe it's reviewing flashcards for 5 minutes. Maybe it's saying a few simple English sentences to yourself in the mirror. Make it so easy that you can't say no. The feeling of success you get from completing this tiny task will motivate you to do it again tomorrow. And that, my friends, is how a habit begins to sprout. Now, once you've decided on your small action, the next step is to make it obvious. Habits are often triggered by a cue. A cue is like a reminder that tells your brain, hey, it's time to do that thing. If your English learning materials are hidden away in a drawer, or if your language app is buried on the third page of your phone screen, it's easy to forget. Out of sight, out of mind. So, how do we make it obvious? One very effective way is called habit stacking. This means you link your new tiny English habit to an existing habit you already do every day without thinking. For example, after I brush my teeth in the morning, I will review 5 English vocabulary words. Brushing your teeth is your existing habit. That's the cue. Reviewing vocabulary is your new habit. Or after I pour my morning coffee, I will read 1 news headline in English. Or during my bus ride to work, I will listen to a 5-minute English podcast. See how that works? You're not trying to find extra time in your day. You're cleverly attaching your new habit to something you already do. Another way to make your habit obvious is to change your environment. If you want to read more in English, put an English book on your bedside table. If you want to use a language learning app, put its icon on the front screen of your phone. If you want to practice writing, leave a notebook and pen on your desk where you can see it. These visual cues act as constant, gentle reminders. You are designing your surroundings to support your English learning goals. Think about it. If you see a plate of cookies on the counter, you're more likely to eat one. If you see your English learning materials, you're more likely to engage with them. Make your English learning cues impossible to ignore. This step is all about making it easy for your brain to remember to do the habit. No willpower needed. Just a smart setup. So we've talked about starting small and making it obvious. The next ingredient for a strong habit is to make it attractive. If an activity feels like a chore, like something you have to do, it's going to be very difficult to stick with it. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So we need to find ways to make our English learning habit more appealing, more enjoyable. How can you make learning English attractive? One powerful way is to connect it to your why. Why do you want to learn English? Is it to travel the world and communicate with people from different cultures? Is it for a better job or career opportunities? Is it to understand your favorite English movies or songs without subtitles? Keep this why very clear in your mind. When you do your small English habit, remind yourself of the bigger dream it's connected to. This makes the small action feel meaningful and exciting. Another trick is to pair your English learning habit with something you already enjoy. This is sometimes called temptation bundling. For example, maybe you love listening to a certain type of music. You could say, I will only listen to my favorite upbeat playlist while I am reviewing my English flashcards. Or, I can have my favorite cup of tea while I read my English graded reader. You're linking the thing you need to do, learn English, with something you want to do, enjoy music or tea. This makes the English learning part feel less like work and more like a pleasant experience. You can also make it attractive by focusing on the positive aspects of learning. Instead of thinking, oh, grammar is so hard, think, wow, I'm understanding how to build sentences better. Celebrate small wins. When you understand a new word or successfully use a new phrase, give yourself a mental pat on the back. This positive reinforcement makes you want to come back for more. Think about what aspects of English you find genuinely interesting. Is it stories? Then read simple stories. Is it music? Then learn with songs. Is it connecting with people? Then find a language exchange partner, even for short chats. When you focus on activities that you naturally find engaging, making the habit attractive becomes much easier. The goal is to look forward to your English learning time, not dread it. All right, so we want to start small, make it obvious, and make it attractive. What's next? We need to make it easy. This sounds similar to start small, but it's more about reducing the friction, the obstacles that stand between you and doing the habit. Even if a habit is small and attractive, if it's difficult to actually perform, you'll likely skip it. Think about how many steps are involved in doing your English habit. If you want to use a language app, but you first have to find your phone, unlock it, search for the app, wait for it to load, and then navigate to your lesson. That's a lot of little steps. Each step is a potential point where you might give up. So, how do we make it easy? Reduce the number of steps. If you use an app, have it on your home screen, maybe even in a folder specifically for English learning. If you use flashcards, keep them in a visible, easily accessible place. If you want to listen to an English podcast, have it pre-downloaded and ready to play with one click. Prepare in advance. If your habit is to write a short English journal entry in the morning, get your notebook and pen ready the night before. If your habit is to watch a short English video, find the video and bookmark it ahead of time. The less effort required. In the moment, the more likely you are to do it. Don't aim for perfection, especially at the beginning. Perfectionism can be a huge barrier. You might think, I don't have a full hour, so I can't study properly. Or, my pronunciation isn't perfect, so I shouldn't speak. Forget perfection. Aim for action. Just doing something is better than doing nothing perfectly. If you planned to study for 30 minutes but only have 10, do the 10 minutes. It still counts. It still reinforces the habit. One of the most common feelings when trying to build new habits is that life gets in the way. You might have the best intentions, your tiny habits all planned out, your cues set up, but then a busy day happens, or you feel tired, or something unexpected comes up. This is normal. The journey of habit formation isn't a perfectly straight line. It has bumps and detours. The key is not to let these bumps throw you completely off course. Let's talk about a very common thought. I don't have time. We are all busy. But remember when we talked about starting small? This is where that strategy really shines. If your English habit is just 5 minutes, it's much harder to say you don't have time for it. Almost everyone can find 5 minutes. Think about the small pockets of time in your day. Waiting for the bus, waiting for water to boil, during a commercial break if you watch TV. These are all opportunities. A very powerful technique to overcome the I don't have time feeling or just general procrastination is called the 2-minute rule. It's simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. So your goal of read 1 page of an English book becomes open the English book and read 1 sentence. Your goal of study vocabulary for 15 minutes becomes open my flashcard app. Your goal of go for a 30-minute walk while listening to an English podcast becomes put on my walking shoes. Why does this work? Because the most difficult part of any task is often just starting. The 2-minute rule helps you master the art of showing up. Once you've opened the book, you might find yourself reading more than 1 sentence. Once you've opened the app, you might review more than 1 word. Once you've put on your shoes, you're much more likely to actually go for that walk. The idea is that a habit must be established before it can be improved. Make it so easy to start that you can't say no. This builds momentum. And even if you only do the 2 minutes, you've still reinforced the habit. You've still cast a vote for being the kind of person who practices English every day. Another challenge you might face is the feeling that you're not making progress, or that progress is too slow. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be times when you feel like you're learning a lot very quickly, and other times when you feel stuck, like you're not improving at all. This is called a plateau, and it's a completely normal part of the learning process for any skill. When you hit a plateau, it's easy to get discouraged and want to give up. This is where your habits and your system of tracking them become your best friends. Remember making it satisfying by tracking your habit? Look back at your calendar with all those X's. That's proof of your consistency, even if you don't feel the progress right now. Trust the process. If you are consistently showing up and doing your small actions, you are improving, even if it's not immediately obvious. It's also helpful to redefine what progress means. Progress isn't just about learning hundreds of new words every week or suddenly understanding complex grammar. Progress can also be understanding one more word in a song than you did last week. Progress can be feeling a tiny bit more confident saying a simple phrase. Progress can be recognizing a grammar structure you learned, even if you can't use it perfectly yet. Celebrate these tiny wins. They are the fuel that keeps you going. And be patient with yourself. Fluency doesn't happen overnight. Think back to when you learned your native language. It took years of constant exposure and practice. Learning English as another language will also take time. Embrace the journey. Enjoy the small discoveries. If you focus too much on the distant goal of fluency, you can miss the joy of the learning process itself. Now, what happens when you inevitably miss a day? Life happens. You get sick, you have an emergency, or you simply forget. The most important thing here is not to fall into the all or nothing trap. Many people think, "Oh, I missed a day. I've ruined my streak. I might as well give up." This is a dangerous mindset. Missing one day is an accident. Missing 2 days is the start of a new, unwanted habit. So the crucial rule here is never miss twice. If you miss your English practice on Monday, make absolutely sure you get back on track on Tuesday, even if it's just for your 2-minute version of the habit. One missed day is a small blip. It doesn't erase all the consistent effort you've put in before. But if you let one missed day turn into 2, then 3, then a week, your habit will quickly unravel. Forgive yourself for missing a day, analyze why it happened if there's a pattern, and then recommit to getting back on track immediately. The focus should be on consistency over the long term, not on an unbroken, perfect streak. A 90% success rate with your habit is far better than giving up entirely after one small failure. Think of it like this. If you're eating healthy and you have one unhealthy meal, do you then decide to eat junk food for the rest of the month? Probably not. You get back to healthy eating at the next meal. Apply the same logic to your English learning habits. This brings us to something deeper about habits. They are not just about what you do. They are about who you become. When you consistently perform a small habit, you are casting a vote for a new identity. Every time you review your English vocabulary, you are casting a vote for, "I am an English learner." Every time you listen to an English podcast, you are casting a vote for, "I am someone who engages with English regularly." Every time you speak, A few sentences in English, even to yourself, you are casting a vote for, I am an English speaker. The goal isn't just to learn English. The goal is to become the type of person who learns and uses English. When your habits and your identity are aligned, it becomes much easier to stick with your actions. You're not forcing yourself to do something that feels unnatural. You're simply acting in accordance with who you are. So ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to become through this process? Do I want to be someone who is disciplined, someone who is curious, someone who perseveres, someone who enjoys learning? Your English habits are the tools to build that identity. Each small act of practice isn't just about accumulating knowledge. It's about reinforcing that desired identity. When you start thinking this way, motivation becomes less of an issue. You're not just trying to achieve an outcome, fluency, you're living out an identity. English learner, speaker, and this identity can help you make good choices even when it's hard. If you identify as a healthy person, you're more likely to choose a salad over fries. If you identify as an English learner, you're more likely to choose your 10-minute practice over scrolling social media for that time. So, as you build these habits, pay attention to this internal shift. Notice how it feels to be someone who consistently works on their English. This internal satisfaction, this sense of becoming, can be one of the most powerful rewards of all. It's not just about the destination, it's about the person you are, becoming along the way. It's also important to regularly review and adjust your habits. What worked for you in the first month might not be the best approach 3 months later. As your English improves, you might find your initial tiny habits too easy. That's a good sign. It means you're ready to level up just a little bit. Maybe your learn one new word habit can become learn 3 new words. Maybe your listen to a 2-minute podcast segment can become listen to a 5-minute segment, or even try a slightly more challenging podcast. The key is to make small, incremental adjustments. Don't suddenly jump from 5 minutes of reading to an hour of reading. That can be overwhelming and break the habit. Think of it like tuning an instrument. You make small adjustments to get the sound just right. Periodically, perhaps once a month, take a few minutes to reflect on your English learning habits. Are they still serving you? Are they still small enough to be consistent? Are they still attractive, easy, and satisfying? Is there anything you could tweak to make them even more effective or enjoyable? For example, if you find yourself consistently skipping a particular habit, don't just feel guilty. Ask why. Is it too difficult? Is the cue not obvious enough? Is it not attractive anymore? Maybe you need to change the time of day you do it, or the specific activity. Perhaps the podcast you chose is boring you now. It's time to find a new one. Perhaps the app you were using isn't engaging anymore. Explore other options. This process of review and adjustment is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of smart learning. It shows that you are engaged and responsive to your own progress and needs. Your English learning journey is unique to you, and your habits should be tailored to fit your life and your evolving skills. Being flexible and willing to adapt is crucial for long-term success. Don't be afraid to experiment and find what truly works best for you at each stage of your learning. This continuous improvement of your learning system itself is a habit worth cultivating. Let's delve a bit deeper into some of the mental hurdles that can make sticking to your English habits tricky, even when you have a good system in place. One of the biggest shadows that can fall over your English learning garden is the fear of making mistakes. This fear can be paralyzing. It can stop you from speaking, from writing, from truly engaging with the language in the active ways that lead to real fluency. You might know the rules, you might understand when others speak, but the thought of producing your own English, imperfect as it might be, can feel terrifying. Why are we so afraid of mistakes? Often, it's because we associate mistakes with failure, with not being good enough. In school, mistakes might have meant a lower grade, but in language learning, mistakes are not your enemy. They are your teachers. Think about it. A baby learning to speak makes countless mistakes. They say words incorrectly, they mix up grammar, but they keep trying. And through those very mistakes, they learn and refine their language. Mistakes are feedback. They show you what you don't yet understand fully, or what you haven't quite mastered. If you never make mistakes, it probably means you're not challenging yourself enough. You're staying in your comfort zone. Real learning happens at the edge of your current ability, and that edge is where mistakes live. So, the first step is to try and change your relationship with mistakes. See them not as failures, but as opportunities to learn. They are proof that you are trying, that you are taking risks, and that you are growing. How can you specifically build habits that help you overcome this fear? Firstly, go back to our principle of starting small, especially with active skills like speaking and writing. If you're afraid to speak, don't aim for a long, complex conversation right away. Your tiny habit could be, as we mentioned, saying 3 simple sentences to yourself, or record yourself speaking for just 1 minute about your day. No one else needs to hear it. The act of producing the language, even in a safe, private space, starts to build your confidence. When it comes to writing, your tiny habit could be writing 1 sentence in English in a journal, or writing a single comment in simple English on a YouTube video related to your hobbies. The key is to lower the stakes. When the task is small, the fear of making a mistake is also smaller. Another strategy is to embrace imperfection. Give yourself permission to be a beginner or an intermediate learner. You are not expected to sound like a native speaker from day 1 or even year 1. Focus on communication, not perfection. If you can get your message across, even with a few grammatical errors or a slightly mispronounced word, that's a success. Native speakers make mistakes in their own language all the time too. Consider finding a safe space for making mistakes. This could be with a very patient language exchange partner who understands your learning, or in a supportive online community for learners. It could even be with an AI chat partner. The important thing is to find an environment where you feel comfortable trying, knowing that mistakes are part of the process and won't be judged harshly. This idea of actively using the language, even with the risk of mistakes, brings us to an important distinction in how you can spend your English learning time. Passive learning versus active learning. Passive learning involves receiving information. This includes things like listening to English music, watching English movies with subtitles in your own language, or even just reading an English text without deeply engaging with it. These activities are not bad. They help with exposure and can build familiarity. However, they are often not enough on their own to build strong, usable English skills. Active learning, on the other hand, requires you to engage your brain more deeply. It means you are actively doing something with the language. Examples include trying to understand a podcast without subtitles or with English subtitles, and then maybe summarizing what you heard. It includes doing grammar exercises, making Your own vocabulary flashcards and testing yourself, trying to speak or write sentences using new words or grammar, or having a conversation. Your English learning habits should ideally include a good mix of both, but with a strong emphasis on active learning, especially as you progress. Why? Because active learning is where you really test your understanding, identify your weaknesses, those valuable mistakes, and strengthen the connections in your brain. It's like the difference between watching someone swim and actually getting in the pool and swimming yourself. You can watch swimmers all day, but you won't learn to swim until you get in the water and try. So, when you are designing your tiny habits, think about how you can make them more active. If your habit is listen to an English song, can you add an active component like try to write down 3 new words I hear in the song? If your habit is read an English news article, can you add try to explain the main idea of the article out loud in English to myself? This doesn't mean every single learning moment has to be intensely active and difficult. But ensuring you have regular, consistent habits that involve active production and engagement will accelerate your progress significantly. This is where the real work of building neural pathways for English happens. It's the effortful part that leads to stronger retention and better ability to use the language spontaneously. Let's consider accountability. Sometimes, even with the best intentions and well-designed habits, it can be hard to stay consistent on your own. This is where having some form of accountability can be incredibly helpful. Accountability simply means you are responsible to someone or something for doing what you said you would do. It adds an external layer of motivation. How can accountability strengthen your English learning habits? It taps into several of our habit-building principles. Firstly, it can make your habit more obvious. If you have scheduled a weekly chat with a language partner, that appointment in your calendar is a very obvious cue. Secondly, it can make the habit more attractive. Learning with a friend or a supportive group can be more fun and engaging than always learning alone. You might look forward to your sessions. Thirdly, and perhaps most powerfully, it makes it satisfying. Or rather, it makes not doing the habit unsatisfying. You don't want to let your partner down or be unprepared for your group session. This desire to meet expectations can be a strong motivator. There are many ways to build accountability into your English learning. One common method is to find a language exchange partner. This is someone who speaks English and wants to learn your native language. You can agree to meet regularly, online or in person, and spend half the time speaking English and half the time speaking their target language. The commitment to your partner helps you show up. Another option is to join an English study group or class. Having scheduled classes and perhaps even homework creates a structure and a sense of responsibility to the teacher and fellow students. Even just telling a friend or family member about your English learning goal and asking them to check in with you regularly can provide a gentle form of accountability. You can also use technology for accountability. There are apps where you can publicly commit to your goals or join challenges with other learners. Some habit tracking apps have social features where you can share your progress with friends. Even something as simple as posting on social media that you're learning English and sharing small updates can create a sense of public commitment. The key is to find a form of accountability that works for you and feels supportive, not stressful. If the accountability feels like too much pressure or causes anxiety, it might be counterproductive. The goal is to find something that adds a positive incentive to stick with your habits. Think about the kind of person you are. Do you work better with a strict deadline or a more gentle encouragement? Do you prefer one-on-one interaction or a group setting? Tailor your accountability strategy to your personality. For some, simply tracking their own habits on a calendar is enough self-accountability. For others, an external person or group makes all the difference. Remember, building habits is not just about the individual actions, but about creating a supportive ecosystem around those actions. This ecosystem includes your environment, your mindset, and sometimes other people. When you consciously design these elements to support your goals, you make it much easier for your good intentions to translate into consistent, effective action. And that consistent action, day by day, is what builds the strong, flourishing English garden you envision. This journey requires patience and persistence. There will be days when you feel highly motivated and learning feels easy. There will be other days when it feels like a struggle, when your brain feels foggy, or when you just don't feel like it. This is where your habits, your systems, and your reasons for learning come into play. They carry you through the tough days so you can continue to make progress, even when motivation wanes. Trust in the power of small, consistent steps. Building habits is the foundation, the sturdy framework for your English learning house. Now, let's talk about making those habits even more powerful, ensuring that the time you dedicate, even if it's just a few minutes each day, truly counts. It's not just about doing the habit, it's about how you do it. Think of it as not just watering your garden, but using the best quality water and making sure it reaches the roots. So you've established a small, consistent habit. Perhaps you're reading one page of English every night, or listening to a 5-minute podcast. How can you supercharge this? The first step is focus. When it's time for your English habit, try to minimize distractions. If you're reading, put your phone on silent and in another room for those few minutes. If you're listening, close other tabs on your computer. Even a short period of focused attention is far more effective than a longer period where your mind is constantly being pulled in different directions. This deep engagement helps your brain absorb and process the information more effectively. We talked about active learning before, and it's worth emphasizing again in the context of maximizing your habit time. Are you truly engaging with the material? If you're listening to a podcast, are you just letting the sounds wash over you, or are you actively trying to catch main ideas, new words, or interesting phrases? Perhaps after listening, you could try to mentally summarize what you heard in 1 or 2 sentences. If you're reading, are you just scanning the words, or are you trying to understand the meaning? Notice how sentences are structured, or guess the meaning of new words from context. This active mental effort is what helps to solidify learning. Another key to making your habit time effective is to operate in what's sometimes called the Goldilocks zone. Not too easy, not too hard, but just right. If your chosen activity is too easy, you might get bored and stop paying attention. If it's too difficult, you'll get frustrated and might want to give up. You want a slight challenge, something that stretches you a little bit but is still achievable. For instance, if you're comfortably understanding beginner podcasts, maybe it's time to try one that's a tiny bit faster or uses slightly more complex vocabulary. If you're reading simple stories, perhaps try one with a few more unfamiliar words per page. This slight stretch keeps your brain engaged and promotes growth. Remember, you can always adjust. If something feels too hard, scale it back. The goal is consistent, engaged practice. Now, let's consider the crucial role of review and repetition. You can learn a new word today, but if you don't encounter it again soon, you're very likely to forget it. Our brains need to see and use information multiple times for it to move from short-term memory to long-term memory. The good news is that well-designed habits naturally incorporate review. For example, if your habit is to use a flashcard app for vocabulary for 5 minutes each day, good apps often use a system called Spaced Repetition System, or SRS. This means the app shows you new words and then brings back words you've learned before at increasing intervals, just when you might be about to forget them. This is an incredibly efficient way to learn and retain vocabulary. You don't even have to think about what to review. The system does it for you. Your habit is simply to open the app and do your session. Even if you're not using an SRS app, you can build review into your habits. If you learn new words from your reading habit, perhaps your next day's habit could include quickly reviewing those words before you start reading something new. If you practice speaking sentences, try to reuse grammar structures or vocabulary you focused on in previous sessions. The consistency of your daily habits means you are creating regular opportunities for this essential repetition. It's like revisiting paths in your English garden. The more you walk them, the clearer and stronger they become. Beyond your dedicated English learning time habits, think about how you can weave English into the fabric of your daily life more broadly. This is where you can really accelerate your exposure and make English feel less like a subject to study and more like a part of your world. This isn't about adding more formal study time, but about making small changes to your environment and your daily routines. One very simple but effective step is to change the language settings on your phone, your computer, or your social media accounts to English. You already know how to use these devices. Seeing the menus and notifications in English will provide constant, low-pressure exposure to everyday vocabulary and phrases. At first, it might feel a little strange, but you'll adapt quickly. Think about what you already do for entertainment or information. Do you watch videos online? Start watching some content creators who speak English on topics you enjoy. Do you listen to music? Explore English-speaking artists? Do you follow the news? Try reading a few headlines from an English news website. Even if you don't understand everything, you're tuning your ear and your mind to the language. Consider your thinking time. We all have internal monologues. Try, just for a few moments each day, to think in English. What are you doing right now? What are your plans for later? Describe your surroundings to yourself in simple English sentences in your head. This might feel awkward at first, but it's a powerful way to practice forming sentences and retrieving vocabulary without any pressure. Another fun and simple idea is to label things in your home. Put sticky notes with the English names on common household items: door, window, table, refrigerator, mirror. Every time you see these items, you'll also see the English word. It's a constant, gentle reminder and a great way to build everyday vocabulary. These small integrations might seem minor on their own, but they have a powerful compounding effect. Each little bit of exposure adds up. They create an environment where English is present, normal, and accessible. This immersion, even if it's self-created, helps to reinforce what you're learning during your focused habit times. It makes your language feel more alive and relevant. Imagine your formal English habits, your daily vocabulary review, your podcast listening, your reading, are like planting seeds and watering them carefully. These other activities, like changing your phone language or listening to English music, are like making sure the soil is rich and the sunlight is good. They create a nourishing environment where your English skills can grow more robustly. This approach also helps to break down the mental barrier between study time and real life. When English is part of your daily environment, it stops feeling like a chore you have to do and starts becoming a tool you can use and a world you can explore. This shift in perspective can make your entire learning journey more enjoyable and sustainable. So, as you continue to build and refine your core English learning habits, also look for these small opportunities to invite more English into your everyday life. Don't try to do everything at once. Pick 1 or 2 small changes to start with. Maybe this week you'll change your phone language. Next week, you might try finding one English-speaking YouTuber whose content you like. Slow, steady integration is the key. Each step, no matter how small it seems, contributes to the larger picture of you becoming more comfortable and confident with English. This creates a positive feedback loop. The more you integrate English, the more familiar it becomes. The more familiar it becomes, the easier it is to learn and use. Okay, let's talk about maintaining momentum over the long haul. Building habits is one thing. Sustaining them for months or even years, which is often what language learning requires, is another challenge entirely. Life has its seasons. There will be periods where you feel incredibly enthusiastic and your progress feels rapid. There will also be periods where your motivation dips, where life gets overwhelmingly busy, or where you feel like you've hit a stubborn plateau. It's during these tougher times that your underlying systems and mindset truly get tested. One of the most powerful ways to maintain long-term momentum is to connect your English learning habits to your deeper values and long-term goals. We touched on your why earlier, but it's worth revisiting. Why did you start learning English in the first place? Is it for career advancement, to connect with family or friends abroad, to travel more confidently, to enjoy movies and books in their original language, to understand different cultures? Your why is your compass. When the daily practice feels like a grind, or when you're tempted to skip your habit, reconnecting with your fundamental reasons for learning can provide a powerful surge of renewed motivation. Write down your why. Keep it somewhere visible. Remind yourself of the bigger picture that your small daily habits are contributing to. If your goal is to get a better job, visualize yourself succeeding in that job because of your English skills. If it's to connect with people, imagine the meaningful conversations you'll be able to have. This emotional connection to your goal makes the daily effort feel more meaningful and less like a chore. Another crucial aspect of long-term sustainability is variety. While consistency in showing up is key, doing the exact same thing every single day for years can lead to boredom. And boredom is a habit killer. Think about your diet. You might eat healthy food consistently, but you probably don't eat the exact same meal every single day. You introduce variety to keep things interesting and to get a range of nutrients. The same applies to your English learning diet. So, while your core habit might be practice English for 15 minutes, what you do in those 15 minutes can change. One day it might be vocabulary flashcards. Another day, it might be listening to a new podcast episode. Another day, you might focus on a short grammar lesson. Another day, you might try writing a few sentences or speaking to yourself. Having a small menu of enjoyable and effective activities you can choose from can keep things fresh. Don't be afraid to explore different resources and methods. There are countless apps, websites, YouTube channels, books, and podcasts for learning English. What works for one person might not work for another, and what works for you now might not be the best fit 6 months from now. Be curious. Try new things. If you find a resource that makes learning feel more like fun than work, that's a huge win. This doesn't mean you should be constantly jumping from one new shiny thing to another without giving anything a proper chance. But it does mean being open to evolving your learning routine as your needs and interests change. The goal is to find a sustainable rhythm that combines consistency with enough novelty to keep you engaged. Let's also address the importance of celebrating milestones, not just the final destination. Learning a language is a long journey, and if you only wait to celebrate until you're fluent, a very subjective term anyway, you'll miss out on a lot of joy and opportunities for positive reinforcement along the way. Set smaller, achievable goals and acknowledge them when you reach them. For example, your goal might be to learn 100 new words this month. When you hit that, celebrate. It doesn't have to be a big party. It could be treating yourself to a nice coffee, watching an extra episode of your favorite show, or simply taking a moment to feel proud of your accomplishment. Other milestones could be finishing a graded reader, having your first short conversation in English, understanding an entire song lyric, or successfully navigating an English website. These small celebrations act like fuel stops on your long journey. They provide encouragement, reinforce your positive habits, and make the process more enjoyable. They remind you that you are making progress, even if it sometimes feels slow. Keep a wins list where you jot down these achievements. When you're feeling discouraged, looking back at this list can be a great reminder of how far you've already come. And what about those inevitable periods when you feel completely stuck, when it seems like you're putting in the effort but not seeing any results? This is where the concept of active plateaus versus passive plateaus can be helpful. A passive plateau is when you keep doing the same things over and over, and your learning stagnates. An active plateau, however, is when you are still engaging, still trying new things, still pushing your boundaries, even if the outward signs of progress are not immediately visible. If you find yourself on a plateau, the first step is not to panic or give up. Instead, analyze. Are you still challenging yourself appropriately? Are you incorporating enough active learning? Have your learning activities become too routine or stale? Perhaps it's time to try a new method. Focus on a different skill for a while. E.g., if you've been focused on vocabulary, maybe shift to pronunciation. Or find a new resource that reignites your interest. Sometimes just changing your approach slightly can help you break through. Consider seeking feedback if you're feeling stuck, especially with speaking or writing. A teacher, a tutor, or a more advanced language partner might be able to pinpoint areas where you can improve or suggest new strategies. Sometimes an outside perspective can see things you can't. It's also important to remember that learning isn't always linear. Sometimes you might feel like you're not progressing, but your brain is actually consolidating information in the background. Then, suddenly, you might experience a leap in understanding or ability. Trust the process, especially if you are consistently applying good learning habits. Another mental tool for long-term commitment is to adopt a growth mindset. This is the belief that your abilities, including your ability to learn a language, are not fixed but can be developed through dedication and hard work. People with a growth mindset embrace challenges, persist in the face of setbacks, see effort as the path to mastery, learn from criticism, and find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. In contrast, a fixed mindset assumes abilities. Our innate gifts, leading to a desire to look smart, avoid challenges, give up easily, see effort as fruitless, ignore useful negative feedback, and feel threatened by the success of others. Cultivating a growth mindset is incredibly beneficial for language learning. When you believe you can improve, you're more likely to put in the consistent effort required by your habits. When you encounter difficulties, like a tricky grammar point or a word you keep forgetting, you see it as a temporary hurdle to overcome through more practice or a different approach, rather than as evidence that you're just not good at languages. How do you cultivate a growth mindset? Pay attention to your self-talk. When you make a mistake, instead of thinking, "I'm terrible at this," try thinking, "Okay, that didn't work. What can I learn from this? What can I try differently next time?" Focus on the process of learning and effort, not just on results. Praise yourself for your persistence and your willingness to try, not just for getting things right. Remember that your brain is like a muscle. The more you use it in challenging ways, the stronger it gets. This journey of English learning, supported by strong habits, is ultimately a journey of personal growth. It's about expanding your world, opening up new opportunities, and discovering new things about yourself by focusing on building a sustainable system of habits, staying connected to your why, embracing variety, celebrating progress, and cultivating a growth mindset. You are setting yourself up not just for language acquisition, but for a rewarding and enriching long-term experience. Let's consider the environment in which you practice your English learning habits. We've touched on making cues obvious and reducing distractions, but your physical and even digital surroundings play a continuous role in either supporting or hindering your efforts. Think of your learning environment as the soil in your English garden. Its quality significantly impacts how well your habits take root and flourish. A dedicated space, if possible, can be incredibly powerful. This doesn't mean you need a separate room labeled English study. It could be a specific corner of a room, a particular chair, or even just a clean, uncluttered section of your desk that you associate primarily with learning English. When you enter this space, it acts as a strong psychological cue, signaling to your brain that it's time to switch into learning mode. This helps to automate the transition into your habit. What makes a good learning space? Firstly, it should be as free from distractions as possible. We've mentioned turning off phone notifications, but also consider visual clutter. A messy desk can be a mental distraction. Try to keep the area tidy and organized. Secondly, ensure good lighting and comfortable seating. If you're physically uncomfortable, it's harder to focus for even a short period. Your body needs to be at ease for your mind to work effectively. Make your learning materials easily accessible within this space. If your habit involves reading an English book, keep it on the desk. If you use an app, have your tablet or phone ready. If you use notebooks and pens, have them within arm's reach. Remember, we want to make the habit easy, and reducing the friction of getting started is key. If you have to spend 5 minutes searching for your materials every time, that's 5 minutes less of learning and an extra barrier to overcome. Your digital environment is just as important, especially since so much learning now happens online. Organize your digital resources. Create a specific folder on your computer or phone for all your English learning apps, websites, and documents. Bookmark frequently used sites. This saves time and mental energy. Consider using a browser extension that blocks distracting websites. during your dedicated study times. You are essentially curating a digital space that supports focus rather than fragmentation. Think about the sounds in your environment too. Some people learn best in complete silence. Others find that certain types of music, like classical music or ambient soundscapes, can help them focus. Experiment to see what works for you. If you live in a noisy household, noise-canceling headphones can be a fantastic investment, creating a quiet bubble for your learning. The goal is to create an atmosphere where your brain can concentrate on the task of learning English without constantly being pulled away by external stimuli. Now, let's connect this to the idea of ritual. Humans are creatures of ritual. Rituals can help to transition us from one state of mind to another. You can create small pre-habit rituals to help you get into the English learning zone. For example, before you start your English practice, you might always make a cup of tea, take 3 deep breaths, or listen to one specific short, calming piece of music. This simple ritual, performed consistently before your habit, acts like a starting gun for your brain. It says, okay, English time is about to begin. This can make it easier to slip into your habit, even on days when you don't feel particularly motivated. This dedicated space and these small rituals also contribute to the make it attractive and make it satisfying principles of habit formation. If your learning space is pleasant and inviting, you're more likely to want to spend time there. If your pre-habit ritual is something you enjoy, it makes the prospect of starting your English practice more appealing. And completing your habit in this dedicated, focused way can enhance the feeling of accomplishment. Beyond your immediate physical and digital space, consider the broader social environment of your learning. We talked about accountability partners, or groups. Surrounding yourself, even virtually, with other people who are also learning English or who support your learning journey can be incredibly beneficial. Join online forums or social media groups dedicated to English learners. You can sympathize, share tips, ask questions, celebrate successes, and find encouragement. Knowing that others are on a similar path can make your own journey feel less solitary and more supported. Conversely, try to limit exposure to negative influences if you encounter them. If someone discourages your efforts or makes you feel bad about your progress, it's okay to create some distance from that negativity, at least concerning your language learning. Your learning environment should be a place of positivity and encouragement. Now, let's think about how we can use habits to specifically target different English skills more deeply. For instance, improving pronunciation is a common goal. How? Can you build a habit around this? Your tiny habit could be practice one English sound for 2 minutes using a pronunciation guide video. Make it obvious by bookmarking a good pronunciation YouTube channel. Make it attractive by focusing on how clear pronunciation will help you be better understood. Make it easy by choosing just one sound per session. Make it satisfying by recording yourself at the beginning of the week and then again at the end, and noticing the improvement. For improving fluency in speaking, short, regular practice is more effective than infrequent long sessions. A habit could be speak out loud in English for 5 minutes on a random topic. You can use a topic generator app or website. The key is just to keep talking, even if you stumble or have to search for words. This builds the mental muscle for spontaneous speech. To make it attractive, you could imagine you're practicing for a future conversation you want to have. To make it satisfying, just acknowledge you did it. You practiced speaking. When it comes to grammar, instead of trying to memorize endless rules. Focus on understanding and using grammar and context. A habit could be identify and analyze one grammar structure in my daily English reading. Or write 3 sentences using a specific grammar point I learned recently. This makes grammar learning active and connected to real language use, which is far more effective than just passively reading rule explanations. For listening comprehension, especially for understanding fast, natural speech, consistent exposure is vital. A habit could be listen to a 1-minute clip of a native English speaker talking, e.g. from a movie, a news report, or an unscripted interview, and try to write down as much as I can understand. Then, listen again with a transcript if available, to check. This is challenging but highly effective. Start with very short clips. The satisfaction comes from understanding a little bit more each time or catching a phrase you wouldn't have before. The overarching principle here is to break down larger skills into very small, manageable, repeatable actions, habits, and then to perform these actions in an environment conducive to focus and learning. It's about being deliberate and intentional with your practice, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. Remember that your brain learns best through patterns and repetition. By creating consistent habits, you are providing your brain with the regular input it needs to build and strengthen the neural pathways for English. Each time you perform your habit, you are reinforcing those pathways, making English more automatic and accessible to you. Consider also the interleaving technique. This means mixing up different types of practice rather than doing long blocks of just one thing. For example, instead of studying vocabulary for 30 minutes straight, you could do 10 minutes of vocabulary, then 10 minutes of listening, then 10 minutes of speaking practice. For some learners, this can keep things more engaging and can lead to better long-term retention because it forces your brain to switch between different skills and recall information in different contexts. You could structure your weekly habits to incorporate this. Perhaps Monday is vocabulary and reading, Tuesday is listening and speaking, Wednesday is grammar and writing, and so on, always keeping the individual habit sessions short and focused. Cheer. Beauty of building a system of habits is that it reduces your reliance on fleeting motivation or willpower. Your system carries you forward. It transforms the daunting task of learning English into a series of small, achievable daily wins. And these daily wins, compounded over time, are what lead to mastery. Let's explore the idea of flow in your English learning habits. Flow is that wonderful state where you become completely absorbed in an activity. Time seems to disappear, and you feel a sense of energized focus and enjoyment in the process itself. Achieving a state of flow during your English practice can make learning not only more effective, but also incredibly rewarding, turning it from a task into a pleasure. How can you increase the chances of experiencing flow while practicing English? One key factor is having clear goals for your practice session, even if it's a short one. When you know what you're trying to achieve, for example, understand the main idea of this short article, or learn and use 5 new phrasal verbs, or practice my pronunciation of the th sound until I feel more comfortable with it, your mind has a clear direction. This clarity helps you focus. Another crucial element for flow is that the task should be well matched to your skill level. As we discussed with the Goldilocks zone, it needs to be challenging enough to keep you engaged, but not so difficult that it causes frustration or anxiety. If the task is too easy, you'll get bored. If it's too hard, you'll feel overwhelmed. Finding that sweet spot where the challenge slightly exceeds your current skill is where flow often happens. This means you need to be continually assessing and adjusting the difficulty of your learning materials and activities as your English improves. Immediate feedback is also important for flow. You need to be able to see how you're doing as you go along. In language learning, this feedback can come in many forms. If you're doing an interactive exercise in an app, it might tell you immediately if your answer is correct. If you're practicing speaking and recording yourself, listening back provides feedback. If you're reading and you successfully guess the meaning of a new word from context and then confirm it, that's feedback. This continuous loop of action and feedback helps you stay engaged and make adjustments in real time. Concentration is, of course, essential. Flow cannot happen if you are constantly being interrupted or distracted. This reinforces the importance of creating that dedicated learning space and minimizing distractions, as we discussed earlier. When you can give your undivided attention to your English practice, you're much more likely to enter a state of flow. Intrinsic reward is perhaps the most defining characteristic of a flow experience. This means the activity itself feels enjoyable and satisfying, regardless of any external rewards. You do it because you love the process. While your long-term why for learning English is important, finding joy in the daily act of learning, the puzzle solving of understanding a new grammar structure, the satisfaction of successfully communicating an idea, the pleasure of understanding a song or a story is what can make your habits truly sustainable and fulfilling. So, how can you design your English habits to be more conducive to flow? Try to incorporate activities that you genuinely find interesting. If you love stories, focus on reading graded readers or listening to narrative podcasts. If you're passionate about a particular hobby, find English resources related to that hobby. When you're learning about something you care about, the language learning aspect can almost feel secondary to the enjoyment of the content. Break down larger tasks into smaller, manageable steps with clear mini goals for each step. This provides more opportunities for experiencing that sense of progress and achievement, which fuels flow. For example, instead of study grammar for an hour, your goal could be understand and practice the use of the present perfect continuous tense in 3 different contexts within 20 minutes. Experiment with different times of day for your English practice. Some people find they can focus better and get into a flow state more easily in the morning, while others are more alert in the evening. Pay attention to your own energy levels and try to schedule your more demanding English habits for times when you're likely to be at your mental peak. Don't be afraid to lose yourself in the activity. Sometimes we are too self-conscious, too worried about making mistakes, or too focused on the outcome. When you allow yourself to become fully immersed in the process of learning, in the language itself, that's when flow is most likely to occur. Give yourself permission to play with the language, to experiment, to be curious. Now, let's shift our focus slightly to the importance of rest and recovery in your habit-building journey. It might seem counterintuitive to talk about rest when we're emphasizing consistency, but just like muscles need rest to grow stronger after exercise, your brain needs downtime to consolidate learning and prevent burnout. You cannot be on all the time. If you try to push yourself too hard every single day without any breaks, your English learning habits can start to feel like a burden rather than a positive part of your life. This can lead to resentment and eventually cause you to abandon your efforts altogether. Sustainable habit formation includes building in periods of rest and lighter activity. This doesn't mean taking weeks off at a time, unless you're on a planned vacation, of course. It means incorporating shorter breaks and variations in intensity. For example, you might have very focused, active learning habits from Monday to Friday. But on Saturday, your English habit might be something more relaxed and passive, like watching an English movie with English subtitles for enjoyment, or listening to English music without actively trying to analyze it. This gives your brain a different kind of exposure to the language without the same level of intense effort. Sleep is also incredibly important for learning and memory consolidation. When you sleep, your brain works to process and store the information you've learned during the day. If you are consistently sleep deprived, your ability to learn and retain new English vocabulary and grammar will be significantly impaired. So, prioritizing good sleep is actually a crucial part of your English learning strategy. Listen to your body and mind. If you're feeling genuinely exhausted or unwell, it's okay to take a day off from your most demanding habits, or to do a much shorter, easier version. Remember the never miss twice rule. Just get back on track the next day. Pushing through when you're truly not up to it can sometimes do more harm than good, leading to frustration and negative associations with your learning. Consider having a review week or a lighter week every month or so. During this week, you might not focus on learning new material, but instead spend your habit time reviewing what you've already learned or engaging in more playful, less structured English activities. This can help solidify your existing knowledge and give your brain a bit of a breather before you dive into new challenges. The goal is to find a rhythm that is sustainable for you in the long term. This rhythm will include periods of intense focus and effort, but also periods of rest, recovery, and lighter engagement. Learning English is a marathon, not a sprint, and pacing yourself appropriately is key to reaching the finish line successfully and without burning out. Think of your energy for learning like a bank account. You make deposits through rest, sleep, and enjoyable low-pressure activities. You make withdrawals through focused study and active practice. You need to ensure you're making enough deposits to cover your withdrawals. Otherwise, you'll end up overdrawn and exhausted. This balanced approach, combining consistent effort with adequate rest and variety, will not only make your English learning journey more effective, but also far more enjoyable and sustainable over the many months and years it may take to achieve your goals. It's about building a healthy, long-term relationship with the English language, one that enriches your life without depleting your energy. Let's consider the power of setting specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals, often known by the acronym SMARTT, to complement your English learning habits. While habits are the consistent actions you take, SMARTT goals can provide direction, motivation, and a way to track your progress on a larger scale. They help you see how your daily bricks are building into something substantial. So, what does a SMARTT goal for English learning look like? Specific. Your goal should be clear and well-defined. Instead of, I want to get better at English. A specific goal might be, I want to improve my conversational English so I can comfortably discuss daily topics. Or, I want to expand my vocabulary to understand articles in my professional field. Measurable. You need a way to track your progress and know when you've achieved your goal. For improve conversational English, a measurable aspect could be able to have a 10-minute conversation with a native speaker on everyday topics with minimal hesitation by the end of 3 months. For expand vocabulary, it could be learn and be able to correctly use 300 new vocabulary words related to my profession within 2 months, tracked using my flashcard app statistics. Achievable. Your goal should be realistic given your current level, resources, and the time you can dedicate. Setting a goal to become completely fluent in 3 months, if you're a beginner, is likely not achievable and will lead to discouragement. However, a goal like complete the first level of my English coursebook in 6 weeks could be very achievable. It's about stretching yourself, but not setting yourself up for failure. Relevant. Your goal should align with your overall why for learning English. If your main reason for learning English is for travel, then a goal focused on understanding academic lectures might be less relevant than a goal focused on learning common travel phrases and understanding directions. Ensure your goals support your bigger aspirations. Time-bound. Your goal needs a deadline. This creates a sense of urgency and helps you stay focused. I will read 1 English graded reader at my level by the end of this month. Or, I will be able to write a simple email in English with correct basic grammar within 4 weeks. Without a time frame, goals can easily get pushed aside. How do SMART goals work with your daily habits? Your daily habits are the actions that will lead you to achieve your SMART goals. For example, if your SMART goal is learn and be able to correctly use 300 new vocabulary words related to my profession within 2 months, your daily habit might be study 5 new professional vocabulary words for 10 minutes each day using my SRS flashcard app. The habit is the small, consistent step. The SMART goal is the larger milestone you're working towards. Setting these kinds of goals can make your daily habits feel more purposeful. You're not just doing your 10 minutes of vocabulary practice randomly. You're doing it because it directly contributes to achieving your clear, measurable goal of learning 300 words. This can significantly boost motivation. When you set a SMART goal, break it down into smaller mini goals or weekly targets. If your goal is to learn 300 words in 2 months, which is about 8 weeks, that means you need to learn roughly 37 to 38 words per week. This makes the larger goal feel less daunting and gives you more frequent opportunities to experience a sense of accomplishment. Regularly review your SMART goals. Are you on track? Do you need to adjust your daily habits? Maybe you're progressing faster than expected, and you can set a more ambitious goal next. Or perhaps the goal was a bit too ambitious, and you need to adjust the time frame or the scope. This regular review process, perhaps weekly or monthly, keeps your goals alive and relevant to your current progress. Celebrate when you achieve a SMART goal. This is a significant accomplishment and deserves recognition. It reinforces your efforts and motivates you for the next goal. This is different from celebrating the completion of a daily habit. It's about acknowledging that you've reached a meaningful checkpoint on your longer journey. Now, let's think about how to handle setbacks when working towards these goals. Despite your best efforts and consistent habits, there will be times when you don't meet a specific target or when progress feels slower than you'd like. This is normal. The key is not to see these as failures, but as learning opportunities. If you miss a weekly target, for example, don't beat yourself up. Instead, analyze why. Did you overestimate how much you could do? Were your daily habits not consistent enough? Did unexpected life events interfere? Understanding the why helps you make adjustments. Maybe you need to break the goal down into even smaller steps, or adjust your daily habit time. or find a different learning resource that works better for you. The flexibility to adjust your goals and your approach is crucial. Language learning is not a perfectly predictable process. Sometimes you'll make rapid progress. Other times, it will feel slower. Your goals should be guiding stars, not rigid chains. Consider sharing your SMARTT goals with an accountability partner or a supportive friend. Just like with habits, sharing your goals can make you more likely to stick to them. Your partner can help you celebrate successes and offer encouragement during challenging times. Another powerful technique is visualization. Regularly visualize yourself successfully achieving your SMARTT goal. Imagine how it will feel. If your goal is to have a confident conversation, visualize yourself doing it, smiling, understanding, and being understood. This mental rehearsal can build confidence and strengthen your motivation to stick with the habits that will get you there. It's also useful to have a mix of short-term and long-term SMARTT goals. Short-term goals, e.g., for the next few weeks or a month, provide quick wins and keep you motivated. Long-term goals, e.g., for 6 months or a year, provide the bigger picture and overall direction. Your short-term goals should be stepping stones towards your long-term goals. For example, a long-term goal might be, within 1 year, I want to be able to watch an English language movie without subtitles and understand 80% of the dialogue. To achieve this, you might set shorter-term SMARTT goals like month 1 to 3. Improve my listening comprehension by completing 3 beginner-level English podcast series and learning 200 common spoken English phrases. Month 4 to 6, be able to watch 10-minute English YouTube videos on familiar topics and understand the main content without subtitles, and so on. Each short-term goal achieved brings you closer to your ultimate objective. By integrating SMARTT goals with your daily habit system, you create a powerful synergy. Your habits provide the consistent engine of progress, while your goals provide the map and the milestones, ensuring your engine is taking you where you want to go. This structured yet flexible approach can make the long journey of English learning more manageable, more motivating, and ultimately more successful. It helps you to be an active, intentional learner, steering your own path towards English proficiency. Let's delve into the concept of deliberate practice and how it can elevate your English learning habits from simple repetition to truly effective skill building. Deliberate practice is not just about putting in hours. It's about practicing in a specific, structured way that is designed to improve performance. It involves focused attention, identifying weaknesses, and working systematically to address them. This is different from mindlessly going through motions. Think of a musician practicing scales. They don't just play them over and over. They listen carefully, identify notes that are out of tune or rhythms that are incorrect, and then they focus on correcting those specific errors. This is deliberate practice. We can apply the same principles to learning English. So how does deliberate practice look in the context of your English habits? First, it requires a clear focus on a specific skill or area you want to improve. Instead of a general habit like practice English, a deliberate practice habit would be more like improve my pronunciation of the R and L sounds, or master the use of past simple versus present perfect tenses in spoken sentences. This narrow focus allows for more targeted effort. Second, deliberate practice involves pushing yourself just beyond your current comfort zone. This is that Goldilocks zone again, challenging but achievable. If you only practice things you already do well, you won't improve much. You need to tackle things that are slightly difficult for you. For example, if you're comfortable with basic sentence structures, you might deliberately practice forming more complex sentences with subordinate clauses. Third, and crucially, deliberate. Practice involves immediate and informative feedback. You need to know if you're doing it right or wrong, and why. This feedback can come from various sources. If you're working with a tutor or a teacher, they can provide direct feedback. If you're using a good language learning app, it might offer corrections. You can also learn to self-monitor. For instance, if you're practicing pronunciation, record yourself and compare it to a native speaker's pronunciation. If you're writing, use a grammar checker tool, but also try to understand the errors it flags. Don't just blindly accept corrections. The key is that the feedback should help you understand your mistakes and how to correct them. Fourth, deliberate practice involves repetition and refinement. Once you identify a weakness and understand how to correct it, you need to practice the correct form repeatedly until it becomes more natural. This isn't just mindless repetition, though. Each repetition should be a conscious effort to perform the skill correctly, paying attention to the feedback you've received. If you keep making the same mistake, you need to stop, analyze why, and adjust your approach. Let's take an example. Suppose you want to improve your spoken fluency and reduce hesitation. Your specific focus, reducing pauses and using filler words more naturally, pushing your comfort zone. Try to speak for 2 minutes continuously on a given topic, aiming for smoother delivery than usual. Getting feedback, record yourself, listen back specifically for unnatural pauses or overuse of certain filler words, like or You could also ask a language partner to give you feedback on this specific aspect. Repetition and refinement. Practice the same topic again, consciously trying to smooth out the pauses or use more varied and natural-sounding fillers, like, well, let me see, you know. Repeat this several times, trying to improve with each attempt. This kind of focused, effortful practice, done consistently as part of your habit routine, leads to much faster and more significant improvement than simply chatting in English without. A specific focus on improvement. How can you integrate deliberate practice into your existing habit structure? If your habit is read an English article for 10 minutes, you can make it deliberate by adding, "Today, I will focus on identifying and understanding all the phrasal verbs in this article. I will write them down and try to create a new sentence with each one." If your habit is listen to an English podcast for 15 minutes, you could make it deliberate by, "Today, I will listen to a 2-minute segment 3 times. The first time, I'll just try to get the main idea. The second time, I'll try to write down key vocabulary. The third time, I'll focus on the speaker's intonation and try to mimic it." Deliberate practice requires more mental effort than passive learning. It can feel like hard work, but this effort is precisely what stimulates brain plasticity and leads to real skill development. Because it's intensive, deliberate practice sessions are often best kept relatively short, especially when you're starting. Even 10-15 minutes of highly focused, deliberate practice on a specific point can be more valuable than an hour of unfocused, passive exposure. One challenge with deliberate practice is that it forces you to confront your weaknesses. This can be uncomfortable. It's often more pleasant to do things we're already good at. But remember the growth mindset. Weaknesses are not permanent. They are areas for development. Embracing this discomfort is part of the process. To make deliberate practice more manageable within your habit system, identify one very specific micro skill you want to improve, e.g., a particular sound, a grammar point, understanding a certain accent. Find reliable resources or methods to get feedback on that skill. Dedicate a small portion of your daily, weekly English habit time to deliberately practicing this micro skill. Track your progress on this specific skill. Did you improve? After a week of focused practice, once you feel you've made good progress, pick a new micro skill to focus on. This approach ensures that you are constantly working on areas that will make the biggest difference to your overall proficiency, rather than just randomly consuming English content. It turns your habit time into highly productive learning time. Consider keeping a deliberate practice journal. In this journal, you can note down the specific skill you're working on, the exercises or activities you're doing, the feedback you receive or observe, your reflections on what's working and what's challenging, small improvements you notice. This journaling can help you stay focused, track your progress, and make your deliberate practice even more systematic. It's also important to balance deliberate practice with more enjoyable, less intensive English activities. If all your English time is highly demanding deliberate practice, you might burn out. So continue to include habits like reading for pleasure, listening to music, or watching videos on topics you enjoy, where the main goal is exposure and enjoyment rather than intense skill improvement. The combination of both focused, effortful practice and enjoyable immersion creates a well-rounded and sustainable learning approach. By incorporating the principles of deliberate practice into your English learning habits, you are taking a proactive and highly effective approach to skill development. You are not just waiting for improvement to happen. You are actively engineering it. This focused effort, applied consistently over time, is a powerful catalyst for reaching your English learning goals much more efficiently. It's about working smarter, not just harder,